If you are new to our channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.
Talk about building your soil. Now, this is the lifeblood of your garden. If you don't have good soil, and we're not growing in hydroponics or aquaponics, that's a different topic for a different day. Whether you're growing in raised beds, containers, ground, soil is, if you don't have good soil, you're not going to have good garden. Now, there are other contributing factors to why your garden may not be successful with insects and diseases, but we're not covering that. We're talking about the soil.
Sure. So you want to look at current issues your plants might be having. Now, if it's something like a bug or a pest or an insect or whatever, that's not necessarily your soil, but something like maybe your leaves,
yellowing of the leaves.
Yeah, yellowing leaves or curling leaves or purple leaves. Like, there could be a combination of those. So you need to look at that first and think, okay, if it's not environmental around the plant or something like an insect, then it could be in the soil.
90% of the problems is typically below soil grade is the issue to the problem. Now, there may be diseases in the soil that's causing root issues or uptake issues, blossom end rot on tomatoes, lack of calcium because the soil's not moist enough for the calcium to be picked up. But current issues, if the plant's very, very yellow, most likely it's a lack of nitrogen, and or if it's in a container, the nutrients has been leached out because of the consistent watering you have to do, so you're going to have to resupplement or add more nutrients of some sort or another into that container for the plants to uptake to grow correctly. So we're going to talk about testing your soil.
Sure.
If you're seeing a lot of issues right now, your number one go-to thing is don't call us and say, well, this is what the 7 things are happening. Get a soil test. That's going to tell you everything.
It's kind of like a blood test for humans. Sometimes you don't know what's going on beneath the surface. So a soil test is definitely something that you would want to invest.
Affordable.
It's affordable. It's worth the cost, especially if you are somebody who wants to grow in the ground and have had success in the past, but things do change over time. And
this would be recommended for ground gardening. I wouldn't say take a soil test of your containers or your raised beds because you're bringing in good soil, purple cow compost, raised bed mix, whatever the case. It's already, that is a good mix. You're not certain of what the nutrient value of the actual ground soil is and or the toxicities that may exist if you're starting a new garden in a new spot in your yard.
Right. So, yeah, you can definitely get a soil test. You can
and the other thing is, Holly, you can get as much information out of a soil test. Just like anything, the more money you spend on a test, the more detailed information you can get.
Right. So you can get this through your local UW extension. There's different places online. You can send your soil, university extensions. Otherwise, you can just do, you go to your favorite search engine and type in how to do a soil test or how to send in for a soil test. And that way you can get that done. Another thing you can do to actually build your soil, say your soil's, it seems okay, everything seems fine, but you want to build it, you want to make sure your plants are going to have proper nutrients, you can add organic material.
What is organic material?
Organic material is anything that you add to your soil that comes from the earth.
Okay.
Pretty much, and is going to add nutrients to your soil. So things like coffee grounds, things like leaves, your own compost in general, any of that is organic material. You want to know where it was derived from because and we've talked about this, if you're getting compost that came from that chemicals was added to that material and then it's broke down based on the level of toxicity those chemicals had in the original form, they may still be very active in the broke down compost. 2,4-D in weed and feed is a perfect example of that. So we want to be aware of that as well. And if you're getting free compost, you want to try to figure out where that, oh, definitely, where that's coming from. Especially if it's coming from like the city yard and it's free, you don't necessarily know. Free is not always good. Free is not always good. You don't know where they gathered that from and what if they just take it from the side of the road and break it down, you don't know what people were putting into their compost. Exactly. And if you're buying compost from Blue Mel's Purple Cow, they have numbers and lots, and they know where all this stuff has come from, and the age process. They've got it very detailed down. So if you need, hey, I bought this from this, and they can track from the origins of that material. So if you have a raised bed, again, we've got the nutrients already in the bed. There's not a whole lot of, there shouldn't be a whole lot of effort go into that. Now, if you're growing in the ground and you're going to start and you're having difficulties with weeds or soil deficiencies and all that,
it's an investment, but it well pays for itself. A raised bed, put it together, you really have no weeds to deal with. You put some mulch on it, put your plants in it, you're done.
Right. So, no, yeah, raised beds are definitely a great option, especially if you don't want to invest time and energy in trying to figure out what your ground soil is like.
Or you have bad ground soil.
Bad ground soil, or you just have a spot in the yard that nothing grows, and you're like, I wonder why. But
well, you want to look up first.
Right, you want to look up. Well, that too, but I'm saying like a nice sunny spot.
Right.
Yeah, so raised beds are definitely an option. Another option would be something like straw bale gardening. That's another virtually weed-free way to garden, where you condition the bale, and then it becomes a container in itself or a raised bed. 2
years max, you're going to get out of that. Yeah,
but it's worth the time and effort, because they do grow beautiful plants.
We want to talk about containers here, because people ask us, and we are asked, what do you do with a container? Do you dump the soil out at the end of the year and start fresh next year? What is the right answer? Okay, I'm going to give you two answers to this. One is the horticultural answer, which is dump the container out and start fresh each and every year. Our answer is it's based on the size of the container. Soil is not cheap. Compost is not cheap. So if it is a 1, 3, 5, 7, 10-gallon container, dump that soil out, start fresh, because you're dealing with a small mass of material. If it's 15, 30, or beyond, remove about half of the material out of the container, top half, and then top it off with new material, new compost, new potting mix, new whatever, and then grow that way. You're going to save money, and the amount of nutrients that, based on your plant, you can add fertilizer to that container, even with that added nutrients of the new material.
I would agree. Yeah, you definitely want to. You want to be smart about it. So horticulture answer, yes, is to dump it out. For a smaller container, that would make sense. But when you have a larger container, you want to think about that.
If you have had a severe disease problem and you can identify that disease that is harbored in the soil of that container, then no matter what the size of that container is, get rid of the soil, either put it in the compost or sprinkle it among the garden or in the yard, and start fresh.
So back to ground gardening.
Yes.
Part of building your soil is attracting worms to your garden.
Mm-hmm.
And that would include things like mulching with leaves that seems to attract a lot of worms. Adding compost so that the worms have something to eat. Same thing with coffee grounds or leaves. All of that is good. Another thing is to layer whatever you're adding to your soil. Layer it. Don't disturb the soil. And I know we might get some rotten tomatoes thrown at us for this, but don't till.
Yeah, we've never tilled. We've used a garden fork when the soil had to be disturbed, because it doesn't pulverize or powderize the soil. Now, if you're dealing with very clay soil, yeah, put some compost on there. You can, let it set for a year, or you can mix it in to help break down the particles of the clay. But we use a garden fork, so if we need to remove roots, we can get the full structure of the root out of the soil, or we don't kill as many worms, because the worms can fall through the tines of the fork and not get cut up with the blades of the tiller. Right.
So I guess, yeah, you definitely want to make sure that you're thinking about what the microbial life is below the soil. It's not just soil. There's things that live in there, especially worms. So if you are going to till, worms do react to vibrations of the earth. And so what you could do is you could take your tiller wherever you're going to till, leave it run for a few minutes, and that way the worms will go deeper into the soil to avoid those vibrations.
Just like when it rains, they burrow deeper. Now, what we've covered here, building your soil, if you really want to get in, there are some definite, absolute must-do type of things. But a lot of this, it's based on your particular situation. There is not here's what you have to do because the Wisconsin vegetable gardeners say so. You have to take evaluation of your growing situation and figure out what is best, one, for your garden, and two, for your dollar that you're going to spend in order to create or refurbish the garden in which you are trying to grow in. We also we need to rotate the crops, because trying to grow tomatoes in the same spot for 19 years, it just doesn't work, because the certain nutrients are sucked out of the soil.
Right, exactly.
And other plants put it back in.
Sure. So, yeah, you definitely want to rotate your crops. It's also good from a plant disease standpoint as well. Like our cucumbers are doing terribly. But we've been planted in the same spot.
Well, we've rotated them 3 foot over, but they have some above-ground disease problems, spider mites and some other issues.
But I think it would help to move them
right,
as well.
Right. And finally, you can grow cover crops, which are crops designed to infuse nitrogen and other nutrients into the ground, as well as you work those in. Not necessarily till them, but fold them under, chop and drop
add
as they break down.
As the organic material, and they are good for the soil as well.
Yep. So just some of the ways in which you can build your soil for a better tomorrow, or if you're growing next year. Thank you for checking out the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener radio show. For more, go to the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com for full-length in-studio video and podcast replay of Season 1. Season 2 underway and added weekly. Tweet us at TWVG Show or hashtag TWVG to be part of the program.